Hi there, it's April the 23rd. We're continuing our journey through the Good News according to Luke, and we're in chapter 21, and we're completing the chapter from verse 29 going through to chapter 22 and verse 13. So Jesus, coming towards the end of chapter 21, is speaking about the cataclysm that is coming and the distress that is coming, particularly upon Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple. And Jesus says, look, you know when the fig tree is in leaf, you can tell when the harvest is coming. And so it is when you see these things happening, when you see some of the things I've been describing happening, then you'll know that my word is going to be fulfilled. It's interesting that in talking about the fig tree being in leaf, Jesus, a couple of chapters later, when he is carrying his cross to Golgotha, he turns to the women of Jerusalem and he says, look, if they do this to the tree when it's green, what will they do to the tree when it's dry? And he kind of links this passage here to that word of the tree being green, the tree being in leaf. Jesus is being cut down in full time of the summer, in full summer of his life. And then Jesus says an exhortation to watch out and to be vigilant, not to get caught up in the things of this world, not to be addicted to the anesthetics of the world, the things that fill the holes, the addictions that people come up with. He says, keep watch, because actually my word will not pass away. Heaven and earth may pass away, but my word will not pass away. And here is Jesus encouraging us to recognize that the fulfillment of his kingdom comes through his death, through his resurrection, through this present age that we're living in, and through his coming again. They're all part of this coming in of the kingdom, and we should remain vigilant for that. At the beginning of chapter 22, the whole story turns towards the unraveling of the downfall, if you like, of Jesus in terms of leading him up to the cross before his great resurrection and ascension. And so the disciple Judas Iscariot, the one who has been, his heart has been filled with enemy plans, he goes to the priests and to the soldiers and he says, I will betray him to you. Now, there are many discussions among scholars about why Judas Iscariot does this. One of the most commonly believed is that he was trying to force Jesus' hand to actually do what the Messiah was supposed to do and overthrow Rome. And therefore he was trying to use this as a lever. He was going to hand Jesus over, believing that Jesus would then turn and would somehow bring down the Roman occupation. And following the fact that Jesus didn't do that, then Judas realizes he's made a terrible mistake. But at this point, he delights the chief priests, he delights the temple guards by telling them that he's going to betray them. And then Jesus, we see, sends his disciples, because it's now the time for Pesach, it's now the time for Passover, and the place where they are getting together has to be prepared. And in the Jewish traditions attached to Pesach, this means there has to be a clearing out of all yeast products, of all leaven. And so they go and they find someone who will give them a room. Now, there's an interesting little connection here. Luke, right at the beginning of his gospel, says that Jesus was laid in a manger because there was no room for them in what the word he uses is the katalima, which means a guest room or a lodging place. We often translate it as inn, but the word it's used in Greek is katalima. And here Jesus sends his disciples to ask the man, where is the katalima? Where is the guest room where I will eat my Passover with my disciples? And they get that ready. At the beginning of his life there's a katalima, and here at the end, towards the end of his life, there's another katalima, there's another lodging place, there's another borrowed room actually where Jesus would be for his last Pesach with his disciples. But this is key because he's chosen this moment, he's chosen this feast, this festival of all the feasts of Israel, because it is the feast of liberation, it's the feast of deliverance from the rule of evil, from the slavery to the enemy, and of the deliverance, of the bringing through the river by miracle, and the coming to encounter God at Sinai. This is the moment that Jesus has chosen, and that's why Pesach, that's why Passover is so important to him at this point. As we see the story of Jesus unfolding here, we trace here Jesus being prepared in these things. This is not happening by chance. There is a preparation here, the preparation of the room itself, the setting aside of the room. Jesus is intent on inaugurating here his covenant. This covenant still stands. We are part of it, and we can know that it's because Jesus intended this. He intended his death, his resurrection. He intended his ascension, the pouring out of the Spirit. He intended us to be part of this family of God that he has brought us into. Have a very good April the 23rd.